Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer and welcome to Best Kept Plans. Today's video is going to be a flip through of my 2022 reading journal from July 2022 through the end of the year. If you're interested in seeing that, please stick around. As I said in my introduction, we're going to be flipping through my 2022 reading journal for the second half of the year. I loved filming my flip through for the first half of 2022, and so I'm really excited to be bringing this video to you all. This is my 2022 reading journal. It is an Archer and Olive A5 notebook. It is a collab with B. Harris. I absolutely love the cover of this journal. I think it's so pretty. And I'm so happy that I picked it up and used it as my reading journal for this, for 2022. I almost just said for this year because I keep forgetting it's 2023. So we're going to be focusing on the second half of 2022. I did do a flip through for the first half of the year, which if I remember, I will try to link up here. But I did want to take you through a couple of pages just as like a little bit of background. So I do have a TBR list right in the beginning of my journal. I ran out of pages for this TBR, so you're gonna see as we do the flip through for the second half of the year that I have another TBR section. I also did this reading rainbow, which I absolutely loved. This is just a way for me visually to be able to see how many books I read each month of the year. And I actually ran out of books on this as well. So later on in the notebook, I have like a little makeshift one-page reading rainbow, which I actually don't think I ever updated. We'll have to see. Beyond that, we're going to cut forward. I do want to show you two other pages, I think it is, before we get to the second half of the year. One of them is my Instagram challenge spread. I decided to do an Instagram challenge starting in April 2022. I basically asked for people on Instagram to give me book recommendations. So for every month from April till December, I did pick one book to read each month that was recommended by someone on Instagram. The only month that I didn't read the book I was recommended was October. I actually forgot about my October book in the month of October. I tried to read it in November, but honestly, it was way too scary. So I ended up having to DNF it after about 50 pages. Other than that, I really enjoyed the vast majority of the books that were in my Instagram challenge for 2022. I would say, I apologize, my video cut out for a second, but I think what I was saying was that I really enjoyed the majority of the books that were recommended to me for my Instagram challenge. Just off the top of my head, Silent Patient, Homegoing, A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow were all 5-star reads for me. I think that I gave Lessons in Chemistry 4.5 stars. In the Holidays, 4 stars. I think The Stranger was also a 4-star book for me. How to Walk Away might have been as well. So vast majority of them I really liked. And then the only other spread that I wanted to share with you all before we get into the flip through for the second half of the year was my Book of the Year spread. So this is something that, along with my Instagram challenge spread, should have been in the beginning of my notebook, but I didn't kind of go into this reading journal with a plan, so they ended up kind of in the middle. But I did end up filling out my whole Book of the Year book bracket, and as you can see, Where the Crawdads Sing is my favorite book of 2022. So flipping forward and getting to July, let's start here. So we have my June recap page, and then we have a new TBR section. Again, I ran out of room in my TBR pages at the beginning of the notebook, so I added in a few more here. I did use some alcohol ink stickers and some ginkgo leaf stickers from According to Allie to put that together. And then we have my July monthly cover page. So sticking with the kind of theme I implemented in the first half of 2022, I use alcohol ink stickers, line art floral stickers from According to Ally. I always use one of these label maker quote stickers from According to Ally. I like having some washi tape. I like having this little mini calendar here. This is where I keep track of the days that I read throughout the month. And then moving forward, we have my 51st book that I read in the year. It's actually pretty cool. I read 50 books in the first half of 2022, which is pretty awesome. And so the Summer of Broken Rules was a young adult romance that I ended up really enjoying. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Reminders of Him from Colleen Hoover, How to Walk Away. That was one of my Instagram challenge books, and I did end up giving that 4 stars. As you can see, I'm sticking with this monthly, like kind of a deco theme throughout the month, where I'm using these long, narrow numbers to mark off what book of the year it is for me. I'm using my paint splatter stamp and then one other decorative stamp. So in this case, it's this kind of abstract stamp, and I have it stamped in a bright blue ink. Love and Gelato was a really, really cute young adult romance that I read. I focused a lot on summer books in the month of July. So we have Summer of Broken Rules. Love and Gelato was a summer book. The Shore, which is actually the first book that I DNF'd in 2022. For some reason, I just couldn't get into it. It was like pulling teeth trying to get myself to read it. So after about 50 pages, I decided to DNF it. It Happened One Summer was my first 5-star read of the month and ended up being my favorite book of July. And then I read the Summer I Turned Pretty series. I really wanted to watch the television show, and so I decided to read the books first, and I thought they were very, very cute. This is the second series I've read from Jenny Han. I really like her series, or I think they're adorable. So then we have my July recap page. Now for all of my recap pages in 2022, I stuck with using these 3 different washi tapes from According to Ally, and I always stuck with the same prompts. So total books that I read, page count that I read, any 5-star reads I had, how many reading days I had, and then one quote. The quote doesn't necessarily have to be from my favorite book I read this month. It's just a quote that I really, really liked. Moving forward from there, we have my August cover page, and then we get right into Hook, Line, and Sinker. So I read It Happened One Summer in July, and then I realized it was a series, so I read the next book in the series, the second book in the series. It's only a duology. In August, I gave it 5 stars. I really, really liked it, and that kind of set the tone for me for the month of August. I ended up having a really ridiculous reading month in August. As you can see, next book was my Instagram challenge book, A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow by Laura Taylor Namey. I gave that 5 stars. I read November 9 by Colleen Hoover. I gave that 5 stars. One of the few 5-star reads I have from Colleen Hoover. The Charm Offensive, which I loved and I don't feel like I've talked about enough. This one was fantastic. I gave that 5 stars. Sophie Kinsella, Love Your Life. I love Sophie Kinsella. I've loved her for a very, very long time and got back into reading her books this year. And this one was I really enjoyed Love Your Life. Then I read Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon, gave that 4.5 stars. And then a new release was Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. Loved this more than The Love Hypothesis, and gave it 5 stars. Definitely a really cool reading month for me, having 6 5-star reads in the month of August. And then we move on to September, again following the same kind of vibe for the September monthly page. I used some sunflowers for the month of September. I thought that went really well. And then the first book I read in September was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I was very worried to read this. I have heard so much hype over it, and I was afraid it was not going to live up to the hype. And I have to say, I was pleasantly disproven in that. I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved this book. The Stranger was my Instagram challenge read for the month of September, and I very pleasantly loved this. I was very worried about reading this book. It's actually short. It's only 159 pages, but I absolutely love this. I definitely want to read more from Albert Camus after reading this, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Meet Me in the Margins, and then I got into the fine print. I loved this book. I had been seeing a lot about the fine print everywhere, and it's a very thick book, but I decided to go for it. absolutely loved this, and because I loved it so much, I decided to pick up the second book in the series right away, which was Terms and Conditions. Again, 5-star read for me. I also read Iona Iverson's Rules for Commuting, which I had heard good things about, and that was a 4.5-star read for me. My first poetry collection that I read in the year 2022, Please Love Me at My Worst, which I really enjoyed. And then I read a series from Colleen Hoover, which I thought was fine. I probably rated a little too high. Lastly, I read 99% Mine by Sally Thorne. I really loved The Hating Game, and I knew that Sally Thorne had a second book out, and I had kind of been saving it for a while, but I finally decided to give it a read, and I really, really liked it. 4.5 stars. We have my September recap page, and then we go into October. I really tried to stick with mystery thrillers in October, and that very quickly ended up not working for me. I read the guest list, I didn't love it, so I ended up pivoting and reading When in Rome, which is from Sarah Adams. This was a new release from her. I absolutely loved this book, gave it 4.5 stars. Then I tried another mystery thriller, The House Across the Lake. It was okay, it was good. I read It Starts With Us, which I pleasantly really, really liked. And then I read my first kind of like Halloween-esque romance, which was The Kiss Curse. I really liked The Kiss Curse. It was very, very cute. Now we have my October recap, and then we have my new reading rainbow. So because I ran out of pages in my, books in my reading rainbow at the beginning of my journal, I put another one in here, and this is not updated because I read, I think, 13 books in December. So we only have 7 marked off. So I definitely have to make sure I finish this off. But after that, we go right into my November reads, starting off with The Match, which was a 5-star read for me. I read this while I was on vacation and really, really liked it. It's actually a duology. I read the next book in the duology afterwards and really liked that as well. As you can see, sticking with the paint splatter, sticking with some type of deco stamp, using different stamps for numbering what my book of the year is. I read The Atlas Paradox next, which was a new release, and I really, really enjoyed it. And then I tried to read my October Instagram challenge book. So I forgot to read it in October. So I tried it in November. I ended up getting 50 pages in and DNFing it. It was just too scary and creepy for me. Next, I read Lessons in Chemistry, which was my November Instagram challenge book, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I honestly keep toying with the idea that it's really, honestly, I feel like a 5-star read for me. I don't know why I rated it 4.5 stars. I feel like it's a 5-star book. Lastly, I read Funny You Should Ask, which was a really interesting romance. And here we have my November recap page. Long quote from Lessons in Chemistry that I could not help but pick from my November recap page. And the last month of 2022, we have my December cover page here, following the same theme with alcohol ink and line art stickers with this quote sticker, all from According to Allie. Did my same little mini calendar here to mark off my reading days. I started off with my Instagram challenge book for December, which was In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. I've read a lot of Christina Lauren books this year and have enjoyed most of them. This one was really cute. It's Childhood Friends to Lovers, which I always really enjoy, so that was a nice one. I definitely tried to read a bunch of holiday romance in December, and some of them went well, like In Holidays. This one, A Merry Little Meet Cute, I did enjoy. I kind of had to take it for what it was. It was a little cheesy, but it was very steamy. So I enjoyed that one. One Day in December, I thought was going to be a holiday romance. It's not really. The characters meet in December. The end of the book does take place around Christmas, but it spans multiple years and it's not always taking place in or around Christmas. So I really did enjoy this one a lot, though. I went back to a holiday romance for You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince, which was a really difficult one for me to get through. Me and that book just didn't fully click, which was really unfortunate. And after I read that, I kind of wanted to stay away from holiday romance, so I read The Inheritance Games. This was a really interesting read. I really enjoyed this one. But after I read this, I kind of was bopping back and forth between these two books. So I started The Hawthorne Legacy, and I was about halfway through it when I ended up reading Love Light Farms. And I say reading, but I listened to it actually on Audible. It just kind of happened to be that I was going to have a long commute one day from work and I wanted to listen to a book, so I just randomly picked this one. I had heard a lot of good things about B.K. Borison, never read anything by that author before. This was a holiday romance. I know I wanted to stay away from holiday romances, but I figured, like, when else am I going to read this book? Might as well. So I started it on that long commute, and I was enjoying it so much that I just kept listening to it until I finished it. So I ended up technically finishing this one before The Hawthorne Legacy, even though I started The Hawthorne Legacy first. And I really am not the kind of person that can read multiple books at a time. Like, that just doesn't work for me. But this was a little bit of an interesting situation. Hawthorne Legacy, I didn't like it as much as the first book, but it wasn't bad, and I went right into the third book in the trilogy, The Final Gambit. Then I read another book of poetry, Aphrodite Made Me Do It by Tristan Mattier, which I actually really enjoyed. It's beautiful, the cover's gorgeous. Really loved that book of poetry. Next, I read an arc for a book that's coming out in January. This is Josh and Gemma, the second time around. I believe this book comes out on January 26th, 2023. I think this video will actually be out by then. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I think part of the reason why I didn't connect with it as well as I feel like I maybe would have is because this is actually the second book in a series, and I didn't realize that until I had already started reading it. So I think if maybe I would have read the first book first and then read this one, I might have enjoyed this more, especially because it's like brother's best friend, childhood friends to lovers. And I love childhood friends to lovers. So I do actually want to go and read the first book in the series just to kind of see how their love story begins. And then next I read Station 11, which is a book that I had tried to read earlier in the year and ended up putting down and knew I wanted to get back to. It wasn't that I didn't like it. I only got about 5 or 10 pages in, and I just, knowing kind of like the synopsis of like what the book was about, I didn't think I was in the right mental state to read it. So I put it down. I went back to it. I devoured it. I couldn't believe how quickly I got through this book. I absolutely loved it. Gave it 5 stars. And then the last 2 books that I read in the year were a duology. I only had a few days left in the end, at the end of December after I finished Station 11, and so I needed a book that I could get through quickly. I happen to have The Off Limits Rule by Sarah Adams already, and so I decided to pick it up and read it. I read it in like a day. So I actually picked up the second book in the duology, The Temporary Roomie, and I ended up reading that one next, and I finished it right on Christmas Eve, and that was my 100th book of the year. So I actually read 50 books in the first half of the year and then 50 books in the second half of the year, which is pretty cool. I didn't start reading until February, so I actually read more in the first half of the year, technically, from the time that I started reading, but I think that's because I stumbled into just some weird books in like October and November that just didn't really capture me. After that, we have my December recap, and then I have my overall 2022 reading recap, using again those same washi tapes from According to Allie. And then that is it. I did have a few pages left in the back here. Good to know that I can kind of like almost utilize an entire journal for the whole year with regards to reading, knowing that in 2023 I am starting with reading right on January 1st. I think I'll still be able to fit all the books I read in the entire year of 2023 in one reading journal, which is really good. And so, yeah, that is the flip through of the second half of 2022 in my reading journal. I hope you all enjoyed this flip through. I have so much fun putting my reading journal together, and it's really cool to be able to share it with you all here on YouTube. If you have any questions about how I put this journal together, about reading, books that I would recommend to people who are just getting into reading, if you have any reading recommendations for me, please don't hesitate to put a comment down below. And as always, everyone, please be safe. Bye-bye.